When installing an intake manifold on a traditional Pontiac engine, it is critical to pay attention to this area where the water crossover interfaces with the timing cover. On a cast iron intake, it's often going to be heavily rusted, and on an aluminum intake, you will usually find it heavily pitted. Either way, you need to make sure it's good and clean before you install the rubber donut O-ring that fits into that recess.
Looks like the remnants of RTV or something in here. RTV and corrosion, that's what that is.
This rubber donut O-ring will come with your intake manifold gasket set, or it will be included as part of an engine overhaul gasket set. It helps to use a bit of RTV or other gasket maker to hold the seal in the intake recess while you maneuver the manifold into place and ultimately pinch this seal up against the timing cover. It's also pretty typical to find corrosion and pitting on the timing cover at the point where this seal interfaces with the intake manifold. After wire brushing or sandblasting this corrosion, it's okay to fill the pits in with a bit of JB Weld or metal set and then file it smooth. Or, in a pinch, you can just spread some RTV on the area before installing the manifold with the donut seal. These areas are very prone to leaking on Pontiacs if you don't get it right. So at this point, we have set the engine in our Trans Am up at number 1 cylinder, top dead center on the power stroke, and installed our distributor, plug wires, and verified our firing order of 18436572. We have also installed our intake manifold and filled the engine with coolant. It's time to see if this old poncho will come back to life.
Right, step number 1 is fill the fuel bowl with gasoline. Try not to spill it on everything else.
There are 4 main elements you need to start an internal combustion engine: fuel, air, ignition at the right time, and compression. An engine without compression will definitely not light off. We know we've got the fuel and air part covered. Now we need to prove we have spark. After that, we will make sure it's at the right time. And as for the compression part, well, that part is an assumption based on the engine having run when parked, and we can hear that it has at least some compression when it's turning over. Well, if you didn't see it, hopefully you could hear the snapping, which tells us that we definitely have healthy spark. I guess that old Excel supercoil still has some life left in it after all. What remains now is to make sure we get that spark happening at the correct time in the cycle, and then we will get light off.
Well, folks, here we have a 1971 Firebird Trans Am 455 HO 4-speed, and it hasn't been started. How long? 23 years.
23 years. Now, it's been kept inside, so we should have a pretty good chance at this, but let's see what happens. Okay. Timing's off. Ooh, I can smell some bad fuel too. Where is it? Oh, that much I do know. There it is. Oh, this is it anyways. It doesn't feel too tight. Oh, maybe. Oh, there we go. Now I know those other YouTube channels are fake. They always just get them to fire right off. Must be fancy editing.
They pre-set them up and let them off.
Is that what they do? Ain't gonna get none of that nonsense here. What you see is what you get. There you go.
Always put them in 180 degrees.
Yeah, I've seen that a number of times, haven't we? Let's try turning it that way. Okay, yeah. No. Going all right, all right. Well, doesn't like that at all. Okay. You sure you got it right?
You may need to
Choke. Let's try choking it.
no, it's choked already. You need to pump it.
Well, it wasn't choked because it was open.
Open a little bit.
Okay.
Did you pump it at all? Then you may need to hold the bowl because that's why I have that thing of gas.
Okay, let's try again.
You may need, yeah, crank it to the right a bit. Right will be advanced.
You got a lot of water or something dripping out of this.
Not, well, down, what do you mean water? Where?
I don't know, something's leaking out of it.
The card?
No?
Oh yeah, no, I know it's got a tool to.
Okay.
I need to sort that out. Okay, that's probably good.
It's not overflowing out of it yet. How can it be good?
Give it
Okay.
a couple of squirts though.
Which way did you want the distributor?
Well,
Clockwise?
Clockwise it'll be advanced because
Yeah.
it's a counterclockwise rotation.
Yeah. Okay, let's try that. I'm going more advanced. Ooh, she's really pumping out, buddy.
What?
That water's really pumping out. Going more advanced. Okay. More advanced? Oh, yeah, that's a lot advanced from where we were. Let's try that. I think the timing's way out. Okay, I've cranked her a lot now. No, that's too much. Okay. Too much. A little more out. There we go.
Wow.
We got her. That's a lot of water coming out. Prime it again?
We'll give it a couple of shots of the. I'm sure that hasn't blown through all everything isn't bold.
Well, you'd be surprised. Okay. I'm going to back the timing off just a hair more. Okay. I'm going to choke it a little bit. All right, go. You got a huge leak coming out of your intake.
Oh, currently?
Yeah.
Let's see. be.
After we doused that mongrel with antifreeze, he decided to go home, and we got to work, correcting our little problem. This intake manifold had a bit of a warp, and the crossover would not seal the coolant passages, with the rest of the intake torqued down, so we performed a little modification that we normally always perform on Pontiac intakes, which is to cut off the crossover. This helps with port alignment, and in this case was the only way we could get the coolant crossover to seal up. The thing to remember is that this is not the intake that originally came with this car. The original, which is long gone now, was an aluminum intake specific to the 455 HO engines, made in 1971 and 1972. This intake is an early 70s cast iron intake that would have come on any of the 4-barrel Pontiacs of the day. While they flow great, it's not the intake this engine was born with, so who knows why it doesn't fit exactly correct. What we do know is that cutting off the crossover corrected the problem. Now we will show you another intake that we performed this mod on and talk a bit about the reasons for doing it.
I'll show you this as an example. Here is an example where I've done that on this engine in the past. It was a little harder to do on this one because this area was solid on this intake. That one will be a lot easier. But what this allows is, as you can see, this crossover is still bolted down and could be sealed up, whereas the intake can be removed. So, in theory, if for whatever reason you wanted to remove the intake, let's say perhaps you have a intake manifold leak, or maybe you want to change intakes, try something different. Whatever the case is, you don't have to drain the coolant out of the engine in order to take the intake off and swap intakes. That's one reason for this. That's just one reason for this. The primary reason I like to do it, for a couple of different things. The primary reason I like to do this is so that you can better align the ports. And by that what I mean is, because this is now separated from the crossover, what's important about the crossover you can't move this intake left to right because of the situating of the crossover has to, when you go to install one of these, this is all I'll explain it. When you go to install a Pontiac intake manifold, the very first thing that you have to do is draw it into the water pump, the timing cover, and ultimately the water pump. Draw it into the timing cover with this bolt right here. That's the first thing you do. And what that does is it compresses this donut O-ring that you put in here. It's a fairly thick O-ring, about the A thick. And it goes in between the intake manifold water crossover and the timing cover, and ultimately feeds into the water pump. So in order for that to seal properly, you must draw this in first, and it will squeeze that grommet or that O-ring, and that'll cause it to seal. If you first put the intake manifold down and bolt it down and tighten these bolts and then tighten this one down, you're almost guaranteed to have a leak at this point, and it'll show up as a puddle of coolant in the valley pan. You'll always see a little dribble of coolant in the valley pan, and that is indicative of this seal this seal being compromised for whatever reason. That's where it'll leak, is right here. You'll have a puddle of coolant. And as I said, to prevent that, you always need to tighten this down first. So what that means is, wherever this thing ends up, once you've tightened this down and squeezed that grommet, that's what your port alignment is going to be, like it or not. If you do it this way, you potentially have, the width of your bolt holes here. You've got enough that you can actually move it a little left to right. And if you take a bore scope and you shoot down and look at these ports with a cheap bore scope, you can actually get the alignment a little bit better. It's just another one of these little tiny minor tweaking things that every one of them adds up and ultimately will give you a bit of benefit. But that's why I like to do that. You don't have to do it, of course. Many people don't. Probably most people do not do it, but it is one of the little Pontiac tricks. And there's really no detrimental reason not to do it, actually. Yeah. You could argue that it even provides an air gap to keep the hot coolant away from the intake and makes it run a little cooler. I don't necessarily agree with that, but you know, because obviously the whole thing is heat soaked anyways. But yeah, that's one of the arguments for it. But really, the best argument for it is being able to remove it without draining the coolant out of the engine, and also for port alignment tweaking. So yeah, that's the reason for cutting the crossover, and that's what I'll be doing on that engine over there.
And with that, the revival of our 1971 455 HO motor is complete. It has a bit of blow-by and it burns a little oil, but overall it runs smooth and quiet, and now it can be started and run whenever we need some motivation to get the restoration on this bird rolling. As always, thanks for watching, and please hit the like and subscribe buttons, as we would like to grow this channel.